I've talked about fear of success on the show before, but I got asked about it again this week, so it's time to revisit the topic. Fear of success. Here we go. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am Mike Sutton with BeBuildHave.com, and I work with first generation business leaders who are getting fed up and burned out by all the doing and are ready to just start being happy and successful in their businesses. Now, fear of success is something that I have become very familiar with over the past couple of years. And if you're anything like me, then maybe you think this could be a possibility, but it sounds kind of counterintuitive and doesn't really make sense, and you're not sure how to wrap your mind around it. If you're on that path, I totally get it. That's the progression. And how long it takes you to deal with it just probably depends on, again, if you're like me, how stubborn you are. But I want to kind of lay out some of the options, help paint a clearer picture of what it might look like so you can identify if this is the challenge that you're struggling with. And then I'll also give you some of the steps to get started in resolving it. Now, the first thing I would say is that it's counterintuitive because it doesn't make sense to be afraid of success. It's like saying you're afraid of love or afraid of joy. Those concepts are inherently good. And we recognize that it's, in a sense, wrong to be afraid of them. And so what I would argue is, and certainly was the case for me and with a lot of the other business owners that I talk to that struggle with this, is that it's not really the success that you're afraid of, but it's something that you've associated with success or linked to success, or a story that you have about success, or something that's implied by the idea of success for you. And so when I talk about unraveling the underlying issues, that's the process that I'm talking about, pulling it apart, taking the good of success and pulling out the negativity of whatever it is that you're afraid of to move towards solving this problem. So where can that negativity come from? I'll give a couple examples. And I typically see two main avenues that this happens. And if neither of them really speaks to you, I'd love to hear from you to get some more insight into your experience. But the two ways that I see it are, one is that success at some point was a setup to failure, and you can't risk that again. So I hate to start with this, but childhood sexual abuse is possibly the strongest example I can provide, because a lot of times that will start with a setup, special treatment, special treats, something that you really want, that you could feel like, I'm getting what I want, this is success, and then all of a sudden it takes that devastatingly dark turn. And so a lot of times we can come away from those experiences feeling like, how could I have let myself be tricked by that success? I should have known that it was just a setup for failure, for this injury, for this just utter devastation. And I start with that because, absolutely not saying that's the case for you, but the statistics on it are fairly devastating. You might want to do some research to see how common childhood sexual abuse actually is. Plus, we have lots of ways to protect ourselves by either blocking out the memories all the way through to minimizing and explaining away the experiences. So don't be afraid to look at these things. But a more maybe benign example is just somebody who's experienced a business failure on the tail of success. The economic crash that we saw in 2008 is a great example. You could have had a strong, successful, thriving business. Things change, and now all of a sudden you're having to lay off employees that you love working with. You're losing business from long-term clients that you have gotten a lot of value from. And you may not want to subject yourself to that kind of disappointment again. And the bridge is built between, yes, I had this enormous success, but along with that was this huge amount of risk, and I don't want to put myself in that kind of risk again. So at some level, I'm going to avoid that amount of success because I understand the risk that goes along with that. The other flavor, I think, is when we end up running into subconscious beliefs or subconscious programming. And so there's a couple different ways this could go. I think one is that I'm afraid that I'm not good enough. And if I really go after success and fall short, it'll prove that I'm not good enough. So I self-sabotage in order to prevent myself from ever really finding out if I'm good enough or not. And that way I can hold on to the hope that maybe I am, even though I don't really feel like it. And this is related to the idea that you perform up to the level of your self-image, how you see yourself. So if you see yourself a certain way, if you perform beyond that, now you've got to go through the very difficult and uncomfortable process of reevaluating your self-image, which again, we have a lot of kind of intrinsic motivation to avoid that kind of activity. And that can put us again in a situation to self-sabotage. And then this final one is something that I really struggled with a lot in the past, which is that I knew growing up, I had a lot of the family story about wealth was that to get it, you had to deprive yourself. And once you got it, you were kind of selfish and looking out for yourself and didn't understand the people who had it harder than you. Now, on a conscious level, I would have said, that's ridiculous. Of course, I don't believe that. That is absolutely not guiding my actions. On the other hand, when I looked at the results that I was getting and the way that I would behave in certain situations, I could see that I was acting as if I did believe this was true, even though consciously I would have said, I don't believe it's true. And the actions went out. So I finally got to a point where I couldn't deny that at some level I did buy into this family story. And again, there's a lot of complicated dynamics behind that. So I totally get it. But what I want you to hear is that if you know you grew up with that family story, it's not enough to just say, well, of course I don't believe that. That's ridiculous. I mean, this is the dynamic behind why kids who were abused end up sometimes abusing their own kids. Because we would say like, no, that's terrible. I would never do that. But when the time comes, then you act in that way that you're familiar with, that you know, that you were conditioned for. And it can be really frustrating and difficult to unravel that, but this is the process. So again, like how long it takes you to unravel all these things, like me, just depends on how stubborn you are maybe and how motivated you are to get through it. So how to get through it. The number one thing, like I said, is unraveling these issues, separating the good from the bad so that you can be a little bit more selective about what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want, and recognize that they don't necessarily have to be linked together. You have linked them together, totally understandably, I'm sure, but they don't have to be linked together. And until we can unravel that, it can be difficult. The other side of that is that success is kind of a big word, and there's a lot that goes into it. Ambition, desire, in my case, strength was a big issue, joy. And so we can develop aversions or fear of any one of those pieces that would end up contributing to success. So out of fear of disappointment, I would traditionally suppress desire, which limits my options moving forward and kind of manifests as a fear of success. Same with joy, same with strength. And so it's important to get more specific about what parts of this are we afraid of, what parts of this are we struggling with, and where do we need to focus. And then in terms of actually moving through it, the suggestion I would make is just start small. I did an episode recently on Are You an Alchemist or a Gardener? And it's very difficult to go from saying I am a failure, I'm afraid of success, to I am successful, I'm no longer afraid of success. That is a very binary, black and white, this or that transition. And it's very difficult for us to do those kinds of things. On the other hand, if you can look for small wins, small seeds of success from where you are right now, and start thinking about how to cultivate them and how to let them grow and how to let them become more significant and how to focus more on where you are already successful, even if it's just in small ways now, and allow that to grow, then that transition can come much faster and much more effectively for you than trying to just change from being one thing to being something else. And so focus on small wins, start small, focus on planting these seeds, and then cultivating success so that you can just have more of it, recognizing where you already have it and can feel good about it and can embrace it and can just generate those positive feelings. So those are my notes for today's show. I did recently release a 20-minute guided meditation that is meant to help you start communicating with your body and becoming aware of where you have some of these negative associations, also to help you cultivate more positive energy as you go into your business, into your life, into your relationships. And I used it very effectively for the first part of this year to get myself in the right mental state to do these video messages. And if you'd like to hear that, I don't have a landing page or anything for it yet. I will shortly, but for now you can just email me, mike@bebuildhave.com, and ask for that guided meditation, and we'll get it to you. If you enjoyed the message, please remember that the only way the show grows is if you share it with your friends. So please consider doing that for me. And if you want to catch up with all the episodes, you can find the show on YouTube, you can find the show on iTunes, and you can find all the episodes in the full show notes at bebuildhave.com. And until we speak again, be the person, build the business, and have the successful life that you want. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am Mike Sutton with bebuildhave.com, and my buttons weren't working. Okay, try that again. I always say we'll try that again. Okay, here we go. I shouldn't crack my neck like that.